Hey guys, it's me again. Um, this is going to be a longer video, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut it into several parts, but I'm also going to put it on YouTube. And I think of all the videos, this may be one that I think is probably one of the most interesting, because this is the one that really provides the rationale for why I'm saying to the governor that he needs to bring in external attorneys and he needs to bring in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or otherwise known as the FBI. And the reason that the FBI need to be brought in is that our chief law enforcement officer and agency, the Attorney Generals, seem to be highly suspect in all of this. So they're not capable of investigating anything because they seem to be right in the thick of it. So let's start off with what happened the other day. We came back from the hospital and my girlfriend got an email from Russell Suzuki, the Attorney General of the state of Hawaii. So the first interesting thing about that is that my girlfriend has only made one request of Governor Ige to meet with him. I've made three, but yet nobody has communicated directly with me, and certainly the Attorney General hasn't. So I'm going to kind of start at the beginning and walk through the sequence of potential criminal activity that has happened, and then we'll come back to, at the end, the actual advice that the Attorney General has given to the governor, and then we'll conclude with the email that he just sent to my girlfriend. And in this, I'm going to, direct some of this directly to the Attorney General. So, excuse me. The first thing is, I want to clear up a couple of things for the Attorney General. First thing is, Mr. Attorney General, the governor swears an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Hawaii. Under Article 5, Section 5 of the Hawaii Constitution, it is the governor's responsibility to make sure that the laws are faithfully executed. It's not yours. The governor nominates you to execute that function, but the responsibility is that of the governors. And that's why I address myself to the governor. So that's number one. The second thing is, as a matter of policy for the Department of the Attorney Generals, and this is from one of your predecessors, to whom you were the first Deputy Attorney General, the number one responsibility of the Attorney General's office is to the people of Hawaii. The second priority is to protect and defend the state, which you guys seem to think is your primary responsibility. It's not. Your primary responsibility is to the people of Hawaii. That's it, full stop. But you don't seem to be good at doing that. You may be good at prosecuting people, in Hawaii. But you're very good at defending and protecting the state. And especially when there has been, misconduct and malfeasance. But that's only your secondary obligation. So now let's talk through some of the crimes and likely crimes that have been committed here. It is a crime in the state of Hawaii to put false information in an official government document, which was done by the principal, Susie Lee, and by the vice principal, Shannon Zakia. That's a crime. And I've maintained that from the get-go. But I never spoke of the criminal element. But you who know criminal law know that that is a crime. Why was that never investigated as a crime? It is a crime in the state of Hawaii to make a false unsworn statement to the authorities, which is who you are. So the chairman of the board and the board of the directors who got you into representing people made a false unsworn statement to you because they know that these individuals did not act within the scope of their duties and responsibilities. That's a crime. Now, if, in fact, you were aware of that, and you were complicit in allowing this to go forward, then the Deputy Attorney Generals have committed a crime. Because you, under Hawaii law, are not allowed to represent a private party. So if the board didn't lie to you, but you were complicit in that and moving forward, you guys are criminals. The next thing is, I alluded to irregularities in the arbitration court, which was brought to the attention of the arbitration court judge, whose responsibility immediately was to report that, which then should have been reported to you for investigation. And that never happened. Judge Crabtree from the Circuit Court actually communicated directly with you, which was quite extraordinary. He didn't communicate with former Attorney General Doug Chin, but as soon as you were nominated, he copied you in on one of the court orders, which was firstly highly irregular, but it seemed to be the judge's way of giving you the nod as the Attorney General that he was basically on the side of the Attorney Generals. There's really no other explanation for it. Your Deputy Attorney General, Max Levins, who withdrew from the case, and I say withdrew, not was substituted, because he wasn't substituted. And if you care to look at his own writing, it was a withdrawal. And he withdrew under civil procedure rules as a substitution, which it was not. What should have applied was the Circuit Court rules. And when he withdrew, he should have given the reason for the withdrawal to the court, and the court should have had to have approved that, which of course the judge never enforced. So again, everything, melds together in this very nebulous, dubious picture that makes your department look highly suspect. But now let's talk about you individually, Russell Suzuki, current Attorney General. You were the supervising attorney for the Department of Education for years. One of my demands is requesting that all non-disclosure agreements with the Department of Education be disclosed. So my question to you is, how many of those did you formulate and sanction? And were there any crimes that were committed that should have been pursued as crimes that were concealed from the public? And related to those non-disclosure agreements, because I know that certain of those non-disclosure agreements were never brought in front of the legislature for appropriation. Were you complicit yourself personally in withholding any of those settlements from the legislature? And if so, why? And then the next question related to non-disclosure agreements. If money did not come from general funds from the legislature, they had to have come from Department of Education funds. So what funds were used within the Department of Education to fund non-disclosure agreements? Were there education funds that were used? Were there federal funds that were used? Were you aware that that's what was used? And were there any crimes committed in using those funds to fund concealed non-disclosure agreements? And if you had any knowledge of crimes being committed in that process, then you too, my friend, have committed a crime. And you are now the Attorney General of the state of Hawaii. So, now let's talk about the advice that you gave to the governor. For the first month, the governor was operating under the assumption that the information that he got from you was true and correct, because you told the governor not to respond to me, not to meet with me, because I was in litigation with the Department of Education. That is something that you know to be untrue. So you gave false information to the governor. In other words, a lie. Subsequent to that, your latest advice has told the governor not to meet with me, not to correspond with me, because I am in litigation. Now, firstly, why the governor is still actually listening to you beats me. Because if you lied to him for a month, why it is he is depending on your advice at this point makes no sense to me. But you said that because I was in litigation that involved the state. Well, let's be clear. I'm in litigation with two private individuals. And the only reason that it involves the state is because you were brought into the picture illegally by the board. But if you know that you were involved illegally, then you yourself have committed a crime in doing so, and you were aware of that. And that would make it understandable as to why you are giving false advice to the governor. Now, in your email to my girlfriend, in which you said to her that you had heard that she wanted to meet with the governor to discuss my pending litigation, which you know is untrue. So in other words, Mr. Attorney General, more of your bullshit. You know that that is not true. You know that that is not the reason. But it seems that you are trying to interject so that somehow you have control over the outcome. And my question to you is that because you want to conceal misconduct and crimes that may have been committed by either you or your department, or in the advice that you gave to the board of directors of the Department of Education? And the reason that I have said to the governor that he needs to bring in external counsel, and he needs to bring in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI, is precisely because of the fact that your conduct and your department appear to be involved very, very suspiciously, and that you, either personally or your department and your actions, need to be investigated by somebody else other than you. So, Mr. Attorney General, if you think that somehow you and I are ever going to end up in the same room discussing a resolution to this, it is never going to happen. And you know why it is never going to happen. You've had 36 years of experience within the Department of the Attorney General. And you have, in those 36 years, been heavily involved in defending the state. You don't have the objectivity to look at the law and look at your obligation, because you have effectively been contaminated by being in the midst of that for 36 years. And to the people that are listening to this video, these are the people that are supposed to represent you. They are the people, as I said to one of the deputy attorney generals, 1.4 million people in the state of Hawaii look to you guys. You're not supposed to be some sort of sleazy ambulance chaser. But unfortunately, that is the impression that you've left me with. You've left an impression of having zero integrity. You've left an impression of having nothing but allegiance to the state, no matter what the misconduct is, with no regard as to whether crimes have been committed or not. And you are not somebody that the people of Hawaii can rely on, period. And quite frankly, the sooner your department is investigated, the sooner the Department of Education is investigated, and the sooner the allegiances that appear to be in the courts is investigated, the sooner we can actually have people that we might look up to and trust again. But right now, forget it. Not going to happen. Everybody, I hope that you take this video to heart. These are the people that we're supposed to be able to look to. And it would certainly seem to me that we can't do that. And if that is the case, then my demands that are asking for an investigation, for disclosure of these non-disclosure agreements that are nothing more than tools of suppression to keep the conduct of the people at the very top concealed. These are not instruments that are given to the ordinary average worker or whatever. You don't get to ask for a non-disclosure agreement. You know, the Attorney General would gladly throw the book at you. But for the people in the upper echelon, you know, he has no problem facilitating concealing of their misconduct and or crimes. And that has to change. And hopefully, if we can get this done within the Department of Education, we can actually go for more broad legislation that makes it illegal across all government agencies and all politicians, and maybe even also in the private sector, but certainly within the government that we fund, you know, to absolutely abolish non-disclosure agreements. You know, they're an archaic tool, you know, that just needs to go. We've seen it with Harvey Weinstein and sexual misconduct. We've seen it with Donald Trump. We've seen it with politicians in Washington. This is the type of stuff that just has to go. End of story. And it's not just the headline-grabbing sexual misconduct. It's any and all misconduct. It has to end. You know, this is 2018. This is supposed to be a democracy. And it should be the same rules for everybody. People in higher up positions should not have the privilege of having impunity and their conduct hidden. That's it. So anyway, I hope this gives you something to think about. I hope you share this with other people. And I seriously hope that you get as many people as you possibly can to sign my petition. You know, the doctors have told me that 30 days they expect me to lose my mental capacity. And at that point, I have absolutely zero voice. And while I'm willing to die, please be sure, you know, I don't want to die. And because I believe I am facing a government that is intent on trying to cover up this type of misconduct, the only way that they're going to respond is if there's a massive voice saying, no, you don't get to do this, and you don't get to let Mr. G die. Because all he's actually trying to do is make the place more honest and fair for absolutely everybody. You know? And that's what it is. You know, these guys should not be able to get away with this. So please, give it some thought. Share it with your friends. It's now a 21-minute video, which I didn't expect. But I think I've covered all the bases. And I think this is the essence of what it is that I'm trying to change. That if the very chief law enforcement officials in the form of the attorney generals are actually themselves corrupt, how the hell do we as ordinary people stand a chance? So let's do something about this, okay? Allah.